Welcome to the OK Book Club. This is Book 3, Episode 1. The book is The War That Saved My Life by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. A Newbery Award-winning book. This book was written in 2016. So, obviously, number one, my email, kevmok21@gmail.com. Comments, questions, reactions, reflections, disagreements, anything that you would like to share with me about this book as we take this journey. This book is 316 pages. It's absolutely a fantastic book. It's a realistic fiction, but historical fiction book. The setting is during 1939, the summer of 1939, when Hitler is about to bomb Britain, the United Kingdom. And the story is about this girl and her struggles with her life and her struggles here during this war. Before you begin, you want to read chapters 1 through 17, pages 1 through 114 before you listen to this episode. So join me on this journey with this new great book, The War That Saved My Life. Here he comes into the kitchen where I'm recording this. Jasper's, he's been doing great lately, thankfully. I'll tell you what, again, a little window into my life. I never had a dog growing up. This is our second dog. Our first dog lived 17 years. His name was Rusty. He was a cockapoo. Jasper is a cavapoo, which is a combination of a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel and a poodle. Rusty was a Cocker Spaniel and a poodle. He's really the perfect dog. Like Doodles. He follows you everywhere. Unconditional love to a fault. One thing that I came late to dogs. All I knew about dogs, even as I entered the workforce, I was an insurance agent. I'd go to people's homes, and if there was any kind of dog, small, large, I would just be afraid of them. Because my only understanding of dogs was not through love at all. Diagonally across the street, which I had to walk in front of all the time, there were 2 or 3 German Shepherds outside, caged and going crazy, barking at me every time I would walk by, and I would live in fear because if they got out, I was history. So, again, we'll get back to the book. And I'm sure you'll hear Jasper in the background. What I'll say about this book before we even start, it's impossible not to be grabbed right away in the first chapter. And it's horrific. It's almost like, and I say horrific because basically the main character, Ada, who I'm guessing is about 10 years old, she's never gone to school. She's basically a prisoner in her own home, in her own room, and her mother abuses her. Her mother hits her in the second paragraph. I knew better than to talk back to ma'am, that's her mother, but sometimes my mouth was faster than my brain. I'd become a fighter that summer. Ma'am smacked me hard. How cruel can you be? Immediately you loathe Ada's mother. You just don't understand how people can be so evil, so mean, right? Her brother, who you get a sense is just about to go into kindergarten, maybe 5 years old. Her brother is able to apparently be okay and wander the neighborhood. His name is Jamie. Ada dreaded being alone, and it got so horrific that you get a sense that Ada almost was becoming like her mother. Ada actually tied her brother to the bed so he wouldn't leave the room, and then she immediately was remorseful. I won't do it again. I promise I'll never do it again. Still, her brother's tears flowed. Ada understood. She said to herself, in all my life, I had never hurt my brother. I had never hit him, not once. Now I'm becoming like Ma'am. So just so you get a good sense of this book, I'm going to read the last page of this first chapter. No, I said. And this is after Jamie says, I'll stay inside. No, you don't need to. But have some tea before you leave. I gave him a mug and a piece of bread and dripping. It was just the two of us that morning. Ma'am gone, had left, I don't know where. I patted Jamie's head and I kissed the top of it and sang him a song and did all I could to make him smile. Pretty soon you're going to be going to school anyhow. I said, astonished that I hadn't really fully realized this before. You'll be gone all day then, but I'll be okay. I'm going to fix things, so I'll be okay. I coaxed him into going out to play, and I waved to him from the window. Then I did what I should have done to start with. I taught myself to walk. What horrible things did Ada do to deserve this punishment, this treatment from her mother? She was unlucky because she was born with a deformed foot. They called it a club foot. Apparently it was somewhat common. Clearly you don't hear this at all anymore because obviously with medicine and doctors and surgery, they can fix these days. But back then, unfortunately, that wasn't the case. And as this first chapter wraps up, if I could walk, maybe Mom wouldn't be so ashamed of me. Maybe we could disguise my crippled foot. Maybe I could leave the room and stay with Jamie, or at least go to him if he needed me. That's what happened, though. Not the way I thought it would. In the end, it was the combination of the two. The end of my little war against Jamie and the start of the big war. Hitler's war that set me free. As we go forward, and I give you little details of what happens with each chapter, not a lot is happening. There's no real huge suspense. There's not a lot of action and adventure, but yet you still find yourself turning the pages. The author does a brilliant job. It's clearly why it won an award. Brilliant job, in my opinion, of just always, when you get a little hint of a half a page and maybe it's getting boring, something then happens that you want to continue to turn the page. Just really, really well done. And by the way, as we get into chapter 2, as you can already tell, this is not appropriate for second graders or younger. Usually the books say for ages 8 to 12. This one specifically says for ages 9 and up. Definitely third grade and up. A book just because of the beginning, and that alone, I don't think it's appropriate. But nevertheless, what ends up happening now is that she actually, and again, at least in the first 14 chapters, this is the worst that it happens. She then gets punished by being put into a cabinet, under a cubby under the sink. If you can imagine that, having to be cramped up into an area in a cabinet. Why? Because her brother ended up getting caught in town stealing, and when her mother confronted Jamie, she said, well, Ada's hungry. It wasn't Ada's fault, but nevertheless, she was the one that was punished. And yes, this family is poor. Ada's going hungry very often, and then we learn at the end of the chapter that they are going to evacuate all the children from downtown London, where the setting is. This is where they live. Why? Because Hitler and Germany are going to possibly be bombing London, and they want to get the kids out. And they say, well, Jamie's going to be evacuated with their friends Billy White and Stephen White, but as a mother says to Ada, you can't leave. You never will. You're stuck here, right here in this room, bombs or no. And then they talk to each other covertly. And Ada says, I'm coming with you, which is a great way to end chapter 2. So Ma'am is off to work, and the evacuation starts, and Ada starts walking, even though she can't. It's painful. Her leg and her foot bleed, right? But who ends up helping her? Off to the train station where they are getting on the train to go out to the countryside. All the kids, right? Who helps? Her buddy that she had been kind of friends with from the window, and he was always outside. Stephen White piggybacked Ada to the train station. They had escaped. And as the chapter 3 ends, we escaped Ma'am, Hitler's bomb, my one-room prison, everything. Crazy or not, I was free. Chapter 4, on their train ride, what does Ada see out the window? A girl on a pony, literally racing along, and Ada says to herself, I didn't tell him that my foot hurt. She's talking to Jamie. I wasn't sure that I ever was going to walk again. But she said to herself, yes, she was going to ride that horse. As we head into chapter 5, the kids get off the bus. There's this iron-faced woman who is in charge, and all these different adults are tasked with taking a certain number of children. As the chapter ends, the hall was empty. The iron woman, Jamie, and me were the only ones left. Ma'am had been right. No one would have us. We were the only ones not chosen. It was clear that not only were they poor compared to everyone else in the city, clothes, they didn't have any. The clothes that were on their back that they were wearing were tattered and worn and dirty, clearly not even bathed. It was just a really sad chapter. We then learn into chapter 6 that there's this lady who is Miss Smith. She ends up being the person that takes in Jamie and Ada. As we start into chapter 7, these next numbered chapters are fascinating, great reads. What do you have here? You have an older woman. She's single. It's not even clear if she's widowed, what her past is, but she doesn't want the children. But clearly she makes that known, but she takes care of the kids, right? She feeds them. And the reactions from both of the kids, Jamie and Ada, is they're not showing her respect. They're being mean. And you can, as you navigate this, you can understand why they're both acting like this. Especially the children. They've just had a horrible past and they're not trusting of adults. It's clear. On page 43, Ada says, Miss Smith was not a nice person, but the bed she put us in was soft and clean with smooth, thin blankets and warm, thicker ones. Really interesting. And what's really fascinating is Jamie is not behaving. And Ada, she holds her tongue very often. She's not being respectful, being mean, just saying things that are just not right, but she keeps to herself and doesn't say a lot. Again, fascinating few chapters here. What clearly makes this a book that you want to embrace and you really start feeling for the characters is exactly that. It's not necessarily easy for an author to write something where you're rooting for the characters, and that's clearly what's happening here. We soon learned that on this property of Miss Smith's, there's this pony named Butter, and Ada has found her purpose in life. There's no question. Everything that feels good about her life now, even though she's away from her mother, is all about Butter. And we learned that this was Becky, who I guess was a friend of Miss Smith's. This belonged to Becky, and Becky has passed away, right? And Ada is saying at the top of page 50, my foot was not successfully resolved, right? It sounded like I've done something wrong. Ma'am always said my foot was my fault. I'd always wondered whether that was true. There was so many little nuggets throughout these pages where, again, like I said, you feel for Ada. And by the way, I'll say this right away. Very rarely, I read the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal every single day. And the Washington Post has this great little nugget of a review. It's on the cover. One of the most unforgettable characters in modern children's literature. For a well-respected news outlet that reviews books to say something like that says a lot about this book. So what does Miss Smith do? With the understanding that she's got this horrible deformed foot, right? She brings her to a doctor, and that's when the actual word comes out that she has a club foot, and the doctor takes care of her. She gets shoes. She gets crutches. She can walk for the first time, right? But she's still not believing in herself, but at least there's some hope here. And as we get into chapter 9, on page 57, I have notes all over the place. This is where Jamie's misbehavior just doesn't seem right. Everything seems wrong. And again, you wonder why children, or for that matter, adults, behave as they do. A lot of times it can be pointed right back to how they were treated, right? The definition of a bully is someone that was bullied. So basically, Jamie's given food and he doesn't like it. He throws it across the room. And at this point in chapter 10, Jamie doesn't want to be there, right? So Jamie began to cry. I want to go home. I don't want a war. I don't want bombs. I'm scared. I want to go home. And then listen to what Ada says on page 63. When I thought of going home, I couldn't breathe. Again, so simple, but so effective. Just great writing. And as we end chapter 10, he's still crying, I want to go home. I want to see Billy White. I want it to be like always. I want to go home. The chapter ends with Ada saying, I didn't, not ever. I had run away once and I'd run away again. As we head into chapter 11, we learn that the iron-faced lady, her name is Lady Thornton. And listen to this. Bottom line is, one of the white boys, Billy, ends up going back to London. We learn this because Miss Smith with Ada and Jamie end up running into Billy and his mother, and they're near the train station, right? And what ends up happening at the bottom of page 71? Even Mrs. White, right? She's describing, like, after they ask, where's Stephen? Is he going? And his mother, Billy's mother says, no, he won't come. He thinks he's important, he does. And then Mrs. White gave Ada an odd look. And she says out loud, I'm not surprised to see you out with ordinary people. I thought they would just put you in an asylum. Friends, an asylum is a psychiatric hospital, like something was wrong with Ada. And when almost, it's so heartbreaking and so horrible to say this out loud, but a long time ago, parents, they didn't want their children, or they couldn't handle them, or there was something wrong, they would give them up to the state, where they would be put and institutionalized in these places. And they called them asylums. Something else that happens throughout all these chapters as well is that we learn that Ada is clearly not educated. Jamie is about to go into kindergarten. He's about to go into school, but Ada doesn't know the meaning of basic words, and everything is new to her in terms of what she's learning. As we are in the middle of chapter 12, page 81, listen to this. Jamie again says, I want to go home. And Ada says, he said that all the time, and I was tired of hearing it. I turned on him. Why? I said, nearly spitting the word. I kept my voice low, but rage I didn't know I felt gushed out of me. So you can do anything you want, and I can do nothing at all? So I can't boss you? So I can be shut up in a room? Jamie's eyes filled with tears. No, he said in a whisper, I don't care if you boss me. And ma'am probably won't shut you up now that you've got crutches and all. Everyone thinks I'm nasty back home, says Ada. They think I'm some kind of monster. They don't, Jamie said, but then he turned his face away. They won't. He started crying, muffling his sobs in his pillow. You've got crutches. Crutches don't change my foot. I'm still the same. It still hurts. I'm still the same. Jamie said, though, through sobs, at home I know the words for things. I knew what he meant. I knew how overwhelmed I felt, too, at times, going into a shop full of things I'd never seen before. There's nothing good at home, I said. You were hungry, remember? No, said Jamie. I wasn't ever hungry. I never was. And if he wasn't, it was only because I gave him most of the food. I was. I was hungry, and I was alone, and I was trapped. And now, no matter what, you have to do what I say. You have to stay here with me. I'm the person who keeps you safe. This is so important to read as we wrap up chapter 12. Jamie's sobs slowed. He looked up at me, his brown eyes still brimming with tears. He rolled over onto his back, and I pulled the sheet up to his chin. I patted his skinny shoulder. Is this safe? He asked. It didn't feel safe. I never felt safe. Yes, I said. You're lying. I know you are. Jamie flopped onto his side, turned his back to me. I lay flat on my back, breathing in the honeysuckle-scented air coming through the open windows. The curtains fluttered against the pale blue walls. I wasn't hungry. I fell asleep. And as we head into chapter 14, one thing that is just, again, horrible is that we learn that a teacher comes to the house with Miss Smith and starts talking about, we need to go to school. And then she looks at Ada's foot and said, oh, yeah, but I don't know about you. Another example of how horrible the life that Ada has to live, the way other people judge her just by looking at her foot. As we head into chapter 15, we are introduced to the Iron Lady's daughter, whose name is Margaret. She ends up falling off a horse, and Ada ends up actually saving her, bringing her back to her house, and this puts her in good standing with the Iron Lady, Lady Thornton, because she sees that clearly she had helped her daughter. All during this journey, she had been out of the house. Miss Smith, when Ada had come back in, Ada told her everything that happened, but Miss Smith didn't believe her. She was livid with her because she didn't know where she was. But later on, when she found out that Ada was telling the truth, Mrs. Smith, you get a window into her true character. She apologized. She felt guilty. And you really got to like Miss Smith. So we're up to page 114. We finished the first 16 chapters. Come along with me in this journey, the war that saved my life. What's clear that I haven't mentioned, I think you get a window into this. What will happen ultimately with Ada and her brother? I think a clear question as we go forward is, when the war is over, we know what happens with the war. We don't know what happens ultimately with Ada out in the countryside and if she's going to be in danger, but will she end up going back to her mother? Will her mother come get her? Take Jamie? How will this ultimately end up? So that's been our first installment of The War That Saved My Life. This has been the OK Book Club, KEVMOK21@gmail.com, with any questions, reflections, commentaries, anything. Until next time, happy reading, my friends.